work session of the James City County Board of Supervisors to order. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Mr. Porter. Call the roll.
Mr. Hippel? Here. Mr. Sadler?
Here.
Mr. McGlinnan? Here. Mr. Eisenhower? Here. Ms. Lawson?
Here.
All present.
Great. We have board discussions. We have the budget discussion on our agenda with you, but I also see Ms. Nolan is here, so.
Would like to, if we could, start off with the closed session.
Oh, all right. That's fine. So we need to get a motion to go into closed session for consultation with legal counsel regarding specific legal matters related to Senate Bill 942 and budget planning pursuant to 2.2-3711A8 of the Code of Virginia.
Motion.
Thank you. Mr. Porter?
Mr. Hippel?
Aye.
Mr. McGlinnan?
Aye.
Ms. Sadler?
Aye.
Ms. Eisenhower?
Aye.
Ms. Lawson?
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right.
Closed session.
With that, we'll go into closed session. that only those items specified in the motion were discussed?
So moved.
Thank you. Mr. Porter, if you'll call the roll.
Ms. Sadler?
Aye.
Mr. McGlinnan?
Aye.
Mr. Hippel?
Aye.
Mr. Eisenhower?
Aye.
Ms. Larson?
Aye. With that,
Motion carries, and it's a roll call vote.
Okay, with this, we'll call to order the James City Service Authority Board of Directors. Mr. Powell?
Mr. Hippel? Here. Mr. Eisenhower? Here. Mr. McGlinnan? Here. Ms. Larson?
Here.
Ms. Sadler?
Here.
thank you. All right, so that we will continue our budget meeting, budget information meeting. Mr. Porter?
We have
Ms. Mellon?
Ms. Mellon here
Ms. Day?
to go over. We have a number of things for.
All right.
All right, so since your last work session, we have sent out an email to you all and provided hard copies for you in an attempt to answer all the questions that you had. And in this particular work session, with Senate Bill 942 being passed with its amendments, that does impact two of the funds for the budget, the general fund and then the tourism investment fund. So we'd like to be able to start the work session pretty much focusing on the general fund first and attempting to balance that particular budget with any changes that you might have. And one of the handouts that we had given you, and it's up on the screen, was the adjustment to the general fund, the grocery exclusion amount of $1 million. So that reduces our sources of revenue by $1 million. Then beyond that, the board had asked for us to identify uses that were non-recurring uses. So we have listed those out in priority order. There is only one exception to that, and that is the school contribution to operations, because we cannot dictate that they use that only for one-time particular uses. And going down from top to bottom in the priority, the staff recommendation is that they offset for the $1 million reduction in sales tax, be offset against the tax relief originally proposed. If the board were to decide that they wanted to keep 2 cents as a tax reduction, this is the priority in which we would suggest eliminating various spending items. And finally, we had also heard from the board that there was at least there might be some interest, and we had also heard from some citizens in not reducing the real estate tax rate at all. If the board were to decide to do that, which would have the additional $1,175,000, it would be staff's recommendation that that be transferred to the CIP fund to help start off goal number 2, the infrastructure goal. And one of the operational initiatives there was to be setting aside money for land use, for looking for land for both schools and or public uses. So with that, I will turn it over to you for your discussion. And if you have any additional questions, either from previously or any additional ones, we have to answer.
I'll start out with, I sat down with Sue yesterday and went through this, and I really appreciate the work she did because she answered a couple of questions I had. The first one was the school contribution operations, which is the recurring item, which is the only recurring item really on the list. So they've really done what I had asked, put things in priority order and put them one time to that one. That is actually only for FY19 and FY20. That it is in 21, it will transfer out of this into the regular budget. That's correct.
It actually would transfer in 20.
20.
Because everything that we had allotted for
Okay.
20 was CIP items.
Okay. Okay. You have 482,000 for operations, though.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. So the 482 for operations would be both years.
Could be, or you could
Yeah.
switch.
I mean, we have the option of doing 20, but for right now, the plan is to do it for 2 years. After that, the plan is to put it back into the normal budget.
Right.
And that the one-time cost for police, for security issues for police and fire are covered in here, and that the personnel issues that were there before are actually transferred over to the normal budget. So nothing has been shifted back or dropped. It's basically just been rearranged how we pay for it. I thought that was a super job of taking care of what I'd asked us to see, and so I'm very, very comfortable with what you did on that.
Well, I may as well be next to jump on the once again, I'm going to bring up the county complex. I think it's very important that we get started with that. I'd like to see the 2 cents to 1.175 be put into a dedicated fund that would be used for that building and start things moving in that direction. I've talked about it since day one on the board. I think we're utilizing funds and resources and everything else being scattered like we are and maintaining the buildings. And what we're trying to do as far as just the upkeep of all the buildings. And I think that's I think we've got an opportunity, which we didn't before because we had to get finances in order because we, bought a lot of things before that. So we had to get that straight and all, and which was a good thing. It gave us a lot of opportunity in the county. But now we're in a position where we can start planning for the next part, which is, I think, our new building. And I'm going to keep pushing as hard as I can for that new building, what we need to do. I see it on my side as far as actually working in the field and knowing what it takes to keep up buildings and keep maintaining things and adding on and remodeling. And it's a whole lot cheaper to build a building, put everybody in, than taking care of a bunch of buildings and additions and heat and air systems and all that. I can only imagine how many heat and air systems we have in James City County that we have to maintain. It's probably staggering to know that amount. And if you all know at your own house how much that takes, you just double that, triple that, and keep on going. So I want to push hard for that 2 cent to be, because I've talked to a lot of people, and they've told me, Michael, that the 2 cent, I think I've only had 1 or 2 people that I've talked to that have said, I'd like tax back. I'd like some money back. And I said, well, do you know how much you're going to get back? Well, no, not really. But I just like to have some money back. I said, well, I can understand that. That makes pretty good sense to me. And no one wants a tax. But I've talked to more people that have told me that you would be crazy not to keep what you have and keep moving forward in the direction that y'all have been going with the strategic plan and everything else. I said, I think it's very important we set a path out and we move forward on that. I know when, and I said it the last meeting, when, y'all gave a tax rebate years ago. I was like, when I got it, I was like, you kidding me? Why couldn't you plan something? And you've already taken the money from me. Why couldn't you plan something and put it to use for my benefit? And I see a county complex as a benefit for the entire community and a building that everyone can come to and have everything from school board meetings to county meetings to water to inspections to everything. And it'll cut down on all the expense that we have daily. And I guarantee if, Mr. Porter, if I can ask you, I know it's going to take a while, so it's nothing that you need to put out right away because it's going to be an in-depth ask. If we were to go under one roof, and I know it's going to be a ballpark, if we were to go underneath one roof, how many vehicles, how much fuel, how much maintenance and all that, rather than, all the maintenance that we put on builds right now and the fuel costs that we have right now, and we hit an elevator and go up for a meeting, and I saw it with the fire department, we'd have a storm coming in, we'd all have to go to one place, gather, what are we going to do, how are we going to treat it, which is what was a necessity. We had to do that to figure out what we're going to do if this storm hits. Wouldn't it be nice if we had that same scenario, we hit a button and we all meet at the 8th floor? And then after the meeting, we go back via staff what's going on, have a second meeting that evening, we go to 8th floor and take care of it. We're getting ready to look at building a building for the school board. we'll spend all that money. You can put that money into the main county complex, put the school board in there. We've got other projects that we're looking to build that if we put them under one building, we're saving in the long run so much money. It'll be a little bit of money to have it. I'd love to see a parking garage underneath it, so our staff is protected, gated. If it's raining, it's snowing, they can go underneath, put everything in their vehicle, hit the button, pull out the gate, and out they go. It'll be green, a simple, straightforward structure, not anything crazy and all that, just a simple rectangle, brick on the outside, metal roof, maybe 8 stories. We've got the property over there in War Hill, put it right next to the police station, and we're set. So that's my 2 cents. We'll keep bringing the 2 cent back.
Just so I understand your thing clearly, this sheet now is figured for 1 penny, 1 cent tax rate cut. That if we decided we wanted to do 2 cents, you would have to eliminate things off of here. If you decided you wanted to keep the 2 cents, you would still have to take some and put it into a certain fund. You would have to take certain things off of the bottom of this list in order to set that money aside, like you're talking
If it
about.
was a full 2 cents, if you're suggesting a full 2 cents to go into, for that fund, then yes, things would have to
Come off of this list. Okay.
Okay, however, if it is just 1 cent,
Just transfers over.
then we can make that adjustment.
But our original budget was 2 cents.
But now
That's
it's
correct.
Right.
Right now, they're proposing 1 based on the cut.
And that's
Okay.
grocery.
right. And you know,
So you're saying, so now you would have to see what you're
Have to
saying.
go
take
back
it with
to
the
1 cent.
correct.
Yeah.
but I think we've got the ability to do it.
I think he was reading off my paper because I had a question about, is there any way to, and I know that you had at one point up there a study about the new office.
Yeah.
So I know that this is, this would not be an in-depth, but efficiencies. So basically, what he just said. I don't know what the county owns and what they don't. Are we renting any space? Do we own all of our space that we have offices in? So I don't know the answer to that question.
And I think that with the office space needs study that is proposed in the budget,
Yeah.
that's that first step of identifying what are all the needs and what are the spaces that are out there that we are using right now.
Okay.
Where are they located and what have you. So
Okay.
I guess I see that as the first step. And then
Okay.
the second step is the facility master plan, which then could, potentially say, once you have that need study, then they'd be able to say, okay, you can have one building and it would need to be X number of square feet to be able to do that.
Okay.
Or you would need, again, probably giving options
Okay.
to be able to evaluate.
So just going back to what you said about going to the strategic plan of putting money away to start looking at either office space for the county or future public needs, because we know, I'm pretty sure we're going to find out in May that there's a need for an elementary school if the school committee decides to go with expansions at the high school level instead of a new high school, which I don't believe we currently have land banked. And then I know that we're talking about another fire station, and I don't want to get in trouble by asking in a public session, but do we have any land banked for the fire station that we're talking about?
There is some land available. I do not know that it's.
But we have not purchased it.
No.
yet.
We would not have to, one piece we would not have to purchase. What I do not know is if that's a good location for a fire station.
Okay. So there is a possibility that we're going to need to purchase some
Yes.
land for
Yes,
that
ma'am.
fire station. Okay. All right.
And there is some land up in the Stonehouse area for a possible school site.
Right.
So that's
Right.
another,
But I don't know. Yeah.
depending on, how it all
Right.
shakes out.
If
But
that's
we-
where but do you take that land and that's, I think, was a high school, middle school spot and use it up for an elementary, which is probably going to be our next need? I mean, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Do you Do you reduce it down or do you keep it for what you may need long-term?
Right.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Now with, do we know, I think there was a figure out of what the school was looking at as far as their the bill that they were looking for staff. And do you know right off, that doesn't have to be.
I don't know. I think it's beyond their 5 years.
Right.
So, but I can look that up and get back to
Okay,
you.
and I'm sorry to ask you earlier, I didn't think about it till just now.
Do you remember how long they said that the new school, if the projections stayed at where they were for when they thought the new school was going to be added on to and would have to move out of James Blair to allow that to happen?
Yeah, it was pretty far out.
10 years?
It was like 10 years.
So they'd have to move out, though, to allow that building to go down and
Yes.
be built up?
Yeah.
Okay.
That if the way they were talking about it is that their projections for middle schools were such now that with this open, that they would probably need to expand that middle school. I think it was in the 10-year range.
So in about 8 years, they would need
About 8 years they would start,
office.
and then that's when they would then have to be leading into doing whatever they're going to do to move their staff to a
Right.
permanent location, right? Because that would then become part of the other school. But I think that in the interim, I think that they were looking at the elementary school in about 4 years.
Okay.
And then, of course, they put money into the budget for not 19 but 20 for expansion
Right.
of the high school. So
Okay.
And I know that, with knowing this, we don't know exact numbers, but I'm gonna talk to several people a little smarter than I am and ask them opinions on if we have, just to get a rough idea, and it won't be concrete, but if we have, and Bill and I talked earlier, I thought we were around 707, we're about 734 employees. And to have a building, what would the cost be roughly? At people that know, that do this all the time, that can say, if you're building a building this size, this is what you're going to need. This is how many people you need. This is how many stories you're going to need. And that gives you a rough idea, square footage wise, where we're looking. So that maybe I can give you a little glimpse of what we're looking at.
Okay, I just jotted down a little list of a couple of things that I think people are looking at possibly. I know I've heard some expression of modest interest in a county building from somebody, right? And I think we also know that we have school needs that are coming up, and that we have some recreation needs, whether it's in terms of the Jamestown area, or I've also heard requests for an aquatic center. PDR is a program that a number of people have been asking about, and land banks for future school or other needs. It seems to me that the most logical thing for us to be thinking about is whether we want to designate some funding to go into a reserve fund, whether it's in the CIP, I guess, or be the logical place to put it, and begin to introduce these items to the CIP process rather than make a determination that this is what we're going to do. I'm not going to sit here today and say I'm ready to say we want a county building. I want to know a lot of information about that before I would prioritize that over other things that money might be used for. I'm also not saying I don't think it's a good idea, but I want to be able to make a choice that's informed and to do it through a process that is consistent with the way we should be evaluating these notions. We've often suffered by the idea that something sort of jumps in line ahead of something else, like an auxiliary gym, perhaps, that comes along that hasn't gone through the process, but that there's obviously demand for it. We want to try to satisfy that, but at the same time, we've got other needs that then have to get pushed back on the line. And so I guess my preference would be to say, if we're going to take some funding for this kind of a purpose, that we ought not to make a hasty decision about how to use it, but recognize that we're going to be called on to use it. and begin the process of identifying which needs are most significant and which ones we would benefit most from putting at the top of the list.
No, I've got no problem with that. I've been talking about this ever since I got on the board, and and I've been pushing it. Maybe not as hard as I'm going to start pushing it. And I even, said, okay, we got some stormwater issues. That was a big chunk of money that took away from what I was hoping we could start the planning process 3-4 years ago. But then I saw the need for the environment and the stormwater issues and what was going on there. So I bowed down and I said, well, let's just, work on that and get that straight. And we've done an excellent job, and we're continuing to do good work on that, and don't want to see that changed. But also know that this need, is something that, we're going to eventually need to start addressing, and I want to get the wheel moving. I spent 5 years. I don't want to be another 5 years talking.
Right. Well, I agree, but I think the real question is, what's the whole range of things that we also know we need to get done at this point, and then what's the way to finance it? Right. Are we going to try to accumulate the money, or are we going to try to figure out what the debt service on borrowing would be for maybe a few of these priorities? Are we going to have to go to the voters and ask, is this something we want to borrow to accomplish? Will we then have the ability to take money that we've been stockpiling in reserve fund and apply that toward the future debt service on that borrowing?
And one thing I was thinking is the properties that we have, of course, we're going to consolidate that. So then that would open those up for sale. And with opening those up for sale, then that money would be also earmarked and applied to the building. And then you also, and now that you've sold it, you've got somebody operating another business in there, and that's another tax revenue that's coming in. So
you are selling.
Oh yeah,
I'll grant you that.
It's all just common sense.
I'd say we've got the PDR program, which may reduce our future need for building schools as rapidly as we might have to otherwise. That protect us from having to extend public services into areas that currently aren't served. And
I have no problem with PDR. I think we can join the two.
But there are limited dollars.
Yes, there's always limited dollars.
Right.
But if we utilize the dollars that we have and hold on to those so that we can do more for the citizens.
Right, and all I'm saying is that we need to do this, we ought to identify those things that people are interested in considering and think about what the implications are going to be in terms of, what are the greatest needs in the immediate future, what are we going to be able to accomplish most effectively now and efficiently? What falls off the list? What stays on? What else might still be out there? But just to begin getting the information in front of us so that we can have a clear sense of what the commitment is.
Would you refresh my memory, because I wasn't on the board at the time, when the last tax increase was voted on, was a new admin building part of something that was being promoted with that?
No.
So if it's been something that's been promoted since
I've been on it.
Since you've been on the board, but that was part of that time era, I'm just wondering. And we haven't, I haven't heard much about it since, about the actual need for that right now. That's just my my thought on it. Sue, what without the sales tax revenue, what was the increase in the budget from last year to this year? Do you happen to know? I mean, we've had
200. No, I'm sorry. In total. 96 to 204, right?
204 is with it.
204 is with it.
That's
Yeah.
with it.
Oh, yes, you're right. Sorry.
So it'd be 200.
1 second, I have that, I can bring that up. Okay, without the sales tax, okay, which would leave the real estate rate the same, it would have been 201,350.
Which gives us,
which would have been difference of, you can see her calculator moving right now.
Don't trust my brain for that.
Does that include the real estate reduction though?
201, 350 versus the 196.
There's a
2.5%.
2.5% increase.
That's actually, yeah. That's on that sheet too, 2.6%.
Which equates to how much in dollars? If one is 1.75.
3,150.
little over 5.
Second.
A little over 5 million.
Yeah, 5.1 million.
5.
So without the sales tax increase and with a reduction of 1 cent, we have,
If the 5.1 would be if there was no sales tax, okay, and there was no reduction in the real estate
Okay.
rate.
and the reduction would be 5.1 increase.
That's correct.
Okay. And then with the 1 cent reduction, let's see, that is, would you say 1.175?
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, we're looking at close to 5 million increase from last year to this year.
Schools ate that up.
Wow.
Well, a little over half. Yeah,
A little over half.
So, I guess my position still stays the same. I feel like we need to be, and I know some have said that it's only $60-70 per year, but if you look at the big total, it's a lot of money. I still feel like at some point, especially with the tax increase we just had, I heard, and I know a lot of people have asked me, well, we thought we were going to be getting a reduction from those increases in revenue, and we haven't seen that yet. So as a good faith measure of being good steward of taxpayer money, I would still advocate returning the sales tax increase to the citizens. And I mean, if we need to do it in whatever shape or form, I'm fine. I'm still looking at maybe 2 to the citizens, and then that leaves the that leaves 1.82. I still think that we need to. This is an opportunity to give back to the business community through BPOL taxes. Our small businesses, I know that they get they take a hit from that, and I think that would encourage our more small businesses to come in, and it would help us to retain the ones that we have. So I still maintain that position of returning what we have coming in from the tax increase to go back to the citizenry in whatever shape or form.
What would you like to see cut?
I would like to see cut from whatever. If it takes that whole thing, then I'm proposing that those increases not happen right now. I mean, we've had all this extra money that we've had coming in year after year after year in revenue increases, and nothing has been given back to the citizens. So in response to the emails I've gotten from my constituents,
I'm sorry.
no, that's okay. This is, and I got criticized for calling it found money. Well, it's found, we can find it right here in the budget, and it's wonderfully laid out, and thank you for making it crystal clear to us, Sue, with all your work. I appreciate all that. But it is in there, and I think at some point we need to put on the brakes a little bit, and I agree with we need to look at our strategic plan and what we need to be doing, but at some point, I mean, it starts to become like a snowball going downhill, and I know from folks up my way that they would appreciate some reduction, even if it seems small to others. To folks I've heard from, it becomes the principle of the thing. So that's where I am.
Just one point of amplification. I think is that it is important to remember that we actually did experience a reduction in revenue for a number of years. Our funding, our budgets did go down. And in fact, when we did raise the tax rate, we were not increasing the tax payment that people had been making prior to that decline in revenue. We were bringing folks back up so that we could afford to provide the services that they had expected. So I think it's a little unfair to say that every year the amount of revenue we're collecting just goes up and up and up. And in fact, in many years, for instance, this year, the biggest contributor to increased revenue, if you exclude the 942, is probably from growth, not from increased collection from current citizens. And so, we have more citizens coming into the community. That means there's more demand for services.
Which is police.
Right, police and fire.
And that's all very important. I mean, I'm a huge supporter of our first responders. I appreciate everything they do, but I guess my point was just to look at the budget as it was. Without that, we had no idea we would be getting this money in. So to look at the budget pre 942 is kind of the position that I'm.
Well, then, how do we look at our funding for the schools are down that we normally get? Our right here is medium newly constructed home value in 2017 is $6,500 less than in 2007. I mean, that's revenue you're losing, and you start. As we grow, it's going to cost. And it calls for police officers, calls for all the new things that are out there that they need to do their job. The fire department, we're lucky to have such a well-staffed and large volunteer station, because if we didn't have that, we'd probably add another 40 people to our staff right now of firefighters. We finally got the firefighters up to where we need them. We're trying to get the police up to where we need them. And that takes funds. And I hear the citizens saying, I want to be protected. I want my kids to be safe in school. I want my roads to be safe. I want a good road to ride on. And, you're hearing that. Well, in order to do any cuts, it's going to take from those programs. It's what do we want to be as a community, and where do we want to go? What do we want to protect? What do we want to save? What do we want to put in recreation? What do we want? We've got needs out there. We never have enough money for all the needs. It's never enough, and we've gotten so many things from Richmond that says you will do this and we will not give you any money. And now it's flipped, and I don't know if we've had this opportunity before where that we're getting a little help. And if we didn't do things with HR TAC, Interstate 64 would not be built. And I have yet to have somebody come to me and say, I hate getting down to Newport News so quick. It just really irritates me. I don't even have to wait in line anymore. And those are the things that make our community what it is. That's what draws people to us. That's what makes things worth having, and that's why people come here, and that's why we enjoy living here, because we have these things. I can call 911 and get a police officer to house in no time. As we grow, it's going to be less, and we're going to have to put more officers and more things in place.
And I guess I'm not looking at it as cuts. I'm looking at it as budget as it exists with a $5 million increase. So,
but it will be a cut.
So if we would just take away these items and
just use the budget that we have.
Cut all that.
Because we weren't anticipating any of this to begin with.
Well, we were going to put it in place years from now, but you're looking at years now come down the road, nothing gets cheaper. It's going to be a tax increase coming one day. You won't hold the line. You can't hold it on your groceries. You're not going to hold it in the board.
What is because I know something I read yesterday about the outlook for the country seems a little not not so rosy. What are you hearing as a financial person? And that was one question, and of course I didn't write the second one down as I was sitting here thinking about it. So it'll come to me as you're
talking.
As you're talking, yes, I'm positive it will.
Yes, there is a lot of news reports out there. I think we have been very conservative in our budgeting.
Okay.
Pretty much it's been like a 2%, and even a year out, it's less than a 2% increase overall. So if the economy was to turn for the bad, we would do like we did the last go around, and we would make adjustments. But it's for as many people that will say that the future is not looking well, there's going to be some people that will say that no, these indicators indicate that it is. So we monitor that information, and I think probably one of our bigger concerns, at least right now, is keeping a close eye on those interest rates, okay, because that will impact borrowing costs. Even though we do have the highest bond rating, and we'll get the lowest available interest rates. But if that is higher than they are currently, that will be increasing our costs.
Okay. And then I mean this question in all sincerity because I don't believe any amount of money is too small. But by taking it to 1%, we had said on a household that was $330, that was going to be about $66. So now looking at about $33. What is the cost administratively to do that in the county? Because do we have to send out all new tax bill? No.
No, that is an automated system.
Okay, so there's
once you establish the tax rate. Okay. Then we would go from there, and the tax rate is just
okay. So there's no cost to that. I just don't. I don't want to be a penny foolish, pound wise, penny foolish. Again, I take every, I'm a coupon person. I shop sales. I take it, I don't hopefully live in a home above my needs, though with my water leak, it's quickly turning that way. But also one thing that was really important to me when I ran was about something I've been very concerned about is future land needs. For the county, meaning schools, public safety. And so, I don't want to get caught in a position where we don't have, like right now, where we don't have land for our, possible, we may have land for a fire station, we may not, if we have to, and, if we have to grow our police, as far as buildings go, and then our schools, I want to be in a good position. So do we save, do we return X money now to then go back out and say, oh, we got to have that money because we've got to buy some property. I want to make sure that we're being good stewards of the money, which isn't always necessarily to say, we're going to give it back, but we're going to plan for the future. So that's a concern I have.
Let me, that's right, in a discussion with Sue yesterday, you're talking about a $200 million budget. And when you have less than $1 million, leeway, that's
tight.
That's that's 0.5%. That's tight. She's getting very concerned. And if you're looking at just a 2% on the $200 million, that's $4 million. So it's a lot of money, but in relationship to the size of the operation, it's really not that much. Now it means a lot to the people who are funding it.
Sure.
I guess one of the things that I had looked at, I'm very happy that we've set this money aside that we're doing like we said with non-recurring items. I think somewhere along the line, my second thing was exactly what you're talking about, putting money aside for schools, whether it's schools or land or other county buildings. We could John's point is well taken. You set the fund, and then you look at the priorities as they come down the pike, and you decide in the capital investment program how we're going to do that. So you don't have to make that decision right now. You have to make a decision that you're going to put it aside right now. So it comes back to essentially what we started out with before this all got changed was 2 cent recommendation. And now we have a 1 cent recommendation before the board. And I think the thing we're wrestling with that we need to probably get a sense of the board is, do we want to give any of this money back to the citizens, any at all, in tax relief, from property taxes, or do we want to keep it all and use it for specific issues that we're talking about? And I think that's the gate question. We've got to get through that gate before we can do anywhere else. Because once we decide, if we decide that we're going to give some of it back, then the question is how much. And if the decision is no, we're not good, we're going to keep it and we're going to use it for investment in certain funds or whatever, then we have to start dealing with, okay, what do we want to put and where? So right. I think we're sort of at that point where we need to really.
Well, right now with what we've got in front of us, it's 1 cent.
1 cent, yeah.
Right.
Because that decision once again was moved out of our hands.
Right.
The other penny's gone, so it's only 1 cent left. And like I said in the past, when the last time I was like, would you, ladies and gentlemen, please put your heads together and utilize that money for the best benefit for myself as a citizen, rather than giving me that back. You've already taken it from me, and it irritated me. It irritated me when that happened. And I'll tell you that I'm not against getting money anywhere, but if I've already given it to you and you put your heads together, just like we did when we did the tax increase. This is what we're going to use the funds for. The citizens understood it. There's a smart bunch of citizens out there. And they were like, it's about time we got somebody showing us what we're going to do with this money. And that made all the difference in the world. You've got some out there that were irritated with it and all that. I understand. I pay a lot of taxes in James City County and proud to be in James City County. So it isn't like any of us on the board don't pay taxes. And anybody in this room that doesn't pay taxes. We're all into this. This is not something we're deciding for a special group. We're deciding for ourselves and our income and what we're doing. And I think that we need to come up with a plan of how we're going to use this 1 penny. This 1 penny. We're talking about 1 penny,
which is $33
on
a year.
$330,000 house.
On a year.
A year.
Which is about half of what we were charging for the stormwater utility.
So I remembered what my question was. One concern I have is that the state already prior to this bill was pushing so much our way. I am concerned about next year more being pushed to us now with the passage of 942, saying, oh, well, you've got an influx of this, so you can now pick up this. So I'd like an opinion, I guess, because there's just no way to, we can't say for fact. So how much, if we think that's a possibility, well, we know it's a possibility, but if just to put that out there. And one thing I guess I would just urge caution with is that it's not as though we wouldn't be giving it back, because we would be investing in the future. It's not just taking the money to, as you say, we have a very conservative organization. I'm hoping we're running as efficiently as we can. We do not have control over that, over 50% of our budget. So, that part is difficult for us. But, I know that I've talked to Mr. Port, we being our most efficient here, we being our most efficient there. because it is a very precious commodity. It is taxpayer money. So I don't know that I'm ready though to say we're not going to do the radio replacement. We're not going to have new buses for Blair. We're not going to do this police vehicle replacement. I don't know that I'm there.
I'm not ready.
So so could you
answer your question from the state, and Mr. Porter, you can add on. A lot of our state funding is formula based. Okay, so schools are formula based.
Right.
Okay, and it's only 3 jurisdictions that is getting this influx of money.
True.
So unless there is some very specific, which I'm not aware of from a state perspective, that's coming just to our region,
True.
I don't see that in the next year the state would be
this would be tangled.
that they would try to tangle that into that.
All right. That's good.
Any cut, any reduction in revenue from the state would be come to everybody.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we see
They
it.
just probably would figure
You
we'd
see it all.
We see
be
it all
in
the
a better
time.
position.
We see it all the time.
I had one question. The school CIP on this page, you have in 918,000.
What page are you on?
This is the little handout sheet.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
And it was where we've done redesign of school entrances this year. And then next year was 918,000 for school CIP. Was that for?
It's the school interest redesign money, the 425 plus the buses for 493. Since they're both capital items.
Okay.
This year, if you add those together, it equates to 918.
Okay.
So it's just a set aside in 20 also for school CIP.
Okay.
But that would be in addition to what we had already anticipated putting into school CIP? Or?
No, it's to help fund some of the items.
The funding source.
Yeah, it was the funding source in the CIP for FY20 for that. So if we were to eliminate that, we would have to go back to the CIP and cut various items.
Where are the school? Are the school buses, the new school buses? Are they? You remember we talked about, is that still in here, or has that been moved back to the regular budget? Or
No, the school buses are
in
the new school buses are in year.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay,
Priority order.
I was looking at schools and I didn't see that bottom one.
Right.
Okay, with priority order. Okay,
Exactly.
thank you. Appreciate that. Okay.
So I understand that, again, just to point that bears on the question of where we headed financially, that the steel costs are going up.
That is correct. The steel costs are volatile. So
are gas prices.
Yeah.
On one building I'm doing, the steel cost went up $52,000. Had to eat.
Yeah.
Just that one day. The next day was going up another 31.
Is aluminum still going up?
Yes.
Well, that's one of the reasons why I had looked at some of the machine tools reduction as well. Business reduction.
So currently, your tax rate is advertised at 84. Okay. The proposed budget was 82, and looking at the priorities, the staff recommendation was to go to 83. I do think that to help you in your decision making, that deciding on the revenue, what your total revenue would be first, and then we can move forward on the expenditure side. I have up the errata sheet that you all are used to seeing. So right now, based on our last work session, there was the request we had put in, the increase to the Arts Commission. We did receive, Thomas Nelson Community College came back to us and reduced their request. So we figured that into the budget. And then we have the reduction in the local sales taxes for the groceries. And then we added back in 1 cent of the reduction. So it's really suggesting that decide on what you want to do revenue-wise. And then we can, and I think in past, there's been, even though I don't believe we have formal votes tonight, there is a straw poll, into what you would like us to move forward with. And then additionally, even though it is not on there, Dr. McGlennon had asked what it would cost for VML, and that was an answer that was provided to you. We've got a price quote of $7,500.
Mr. Porter, what is your opinion of, you were the one that came in with right. Do you think a 1%? Do you think that money's best used putting it aside for the future? What?
At this point, with the change in the groceries, all that, I think it's best to put it aside for land banking or for future investing that money, putting it in and hold it till you sort out your priorities for all the needs. Like, we now getting calls to PDR, all those things that are now coming back. I think you're best holding.
Yeah, I wondered if some of that PDR increase had to do with a particular, like that we might rush out and buy a particular piece of land that is being discussed for development. So I didn't think that was going to happen quite that fast.
The calls that I've got are more interest in the program and some sections to start it back up and get it going. Okay. Because there's more pressure.
And
and to be fair, it would probably, I'm sorry, it would probably be fair to have, because we haven't been on here for what exactly that program entails and et cetera. So to know more about it, because I don't know.
And the PDR, we were once again, I was part of the group that said, let's put it on the shelf for the time being, because we all agreed that we needed to look at our financing and get that back into place. And we've done it. Y'all have done a great job in moving that forward. Now it's time to look at that and go, okay, that program did well as far as protecting our rural lands. It was very instrumental in protecting pieces of land that we may not have right now. And we need to still look at that and make sure we're not a community that, and I won't name any of them, that we may not want to look like. We want to look like James City County. We may not want to build everything out. We may want to have places like Ford Road, which is a beautiful road, stay pristine. And if your children or grandchildren want to ride horses, they know they can go out to Ford Road because that's where you can ride horses. And so we've got to look at all those things. And my suggestion would be to take the 1.175 and put it into savings. We don't have to dedicate tonight what we're going to do with it, where we're going to do with it, whatever, but lock that money up so that we can take that and the board can decide what we need to put that into. And continue these other, how much trouble we've been talking about with the police department that they've had certain areas coverage. We need to support them. We need to support our firemen, our policemen, our schools. It's part of what makes us what we are. We're talking about one penny. One got taken from us, and we're talking about one more penny. And I think we need to put that penny into savings in order to do the projects that we decide need to be done by listening to our citizens and moving forward. And that would be my suggestion, to get off, middle ground here and get things moving. My suggestion, I would move forward with this. That would be my straw poll vote.
I think that's something I could get behind as well. With the caveat, however, that if we have a year of this fund being, because I think part of the issue is that people are looking at us on the local level to fix something that was done on the state level by the increase in the sales tax. But if we do see that we are it's doing better than we thought. I mean, that we have to really look at this next year.
Yeah.
And if we've gotten a much greater amount of revenue, then we have to be prepared, because I think people are counting on us to send it back, and not to send it back to the state, to give it back to now. But of course, that's giving it back to people that own real estate, and as we know, everybody that's impacted by the sales tax does not own real estate. But just making sure that we're not just continuing to say, oh, this is money we're going to continue to spend, that we're really looking at it and making sure that we're doing what we're saying we're going to do, that we're actively looking to bank land so that we're saving money in the long run, and that if there is a possibility again of next year looking at the tax rate, that we do that. Because I think, I appreciate what you've done this year, and but as we can see, the grocery making $1 million, that's a big difference.
You brought up a good point. If I can add one more thing, you brought up a good point. We can't give it back to who we got it from. We can try. So why don't we try to give it back to the community as a whole and put that into something that betters our community? That would be, to me, more of a way to spread it out to everyone than trying to get it to maybe only landowners, maybe only business owners. But the person is sitting there waiting on a school bus or waiting on a water bus. Maybe we've got a shelter there now. We can give it to the whole community. We can address everyone as much as possible.
Thank you. Yeah, and let's remember a couple of things about the sources of the money. At least a significant portion of it is coming from tourism. Mm-hmm. So it's not as if the entire $4.5 million is being paid by our local taxpayers. We were able to get the state to modify the proposal. The governor amended the proposal to make it less onerous than it was. That's good.
Yeah. With the $2.
Saved $2 million worth of revenue on groceries, $1 million coming to the county, $1 million to the tourism fund. But some of the money is coming through visitors to the area, and I think that as we're thinking about how we utilize that, we should be considering how we provide services to people that need help. I had one question, and that is, where do we reflect the $412,000?
We're going to reflect that in the tourism fund, since there was a $2 tax, and still put it directly there.
Okay.
And then when we get to that fund, we'll talk about the recommendation.
All right.
Okay.
I wanted to go back to the machine and tools moving forward, because somebody had sent me a comparison to another county, but there was, I don't know if I will send it to staff, because I'd like to know if it's a fair comparison, if and when that was looked at, what kind of, if we get any pushback from that, if we can just get an analysis of that for, I realize that this, I'm not sure this budget is coming, but moving forward.
We can do that.
So, okay, I will send that to you. So, okay.
What direction are we going?
Well, it sounds, Miss Sadler is, I think we know where Miss Sadler is.
John?
I guess my inclination at this point is to say that the best utilization for what would amount to effectively a 1 cent reduction in the tax rate would be to try to hold it to see what kind of needs we're going to have, to make that assessment about what the trade-off would be, so to put it into the capital improvement plan budget for now, and then see if we've got the flexibility to do anything else on tax relief after this year.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that, initially, and I still would like to give a penny of it back if I could, if we could. But if the will of the board is to hang on to it, then that my second priority was funding for future schools or funding for, as I said, because schools are going to be a big part of that. I'm okay with putting that money in that fund. I think what's really important for us, though, this year and next, is that we keep this same kind of sheet in the budget so that everybody in the county can look at it and say, all right, here's the money. Here's what they're doing with it. Right. And that it's very simple, one place that they can go and they can hold us accountable because they need to be watching. And our job is to convince our constituents that we are going to spend the money wisely on these things which affect public safety and schools and quality of life in the county, and that they're going to get good return or investment on their money. But that's the job we have to do with them. So I can support putting it aside.
And to add to what Ruth was saying about where I stand,
I'm sorry, I spoke for you.
It's pretty obvious where I stand. But I think just because this is all new and all fresh, and with everything we read and saw, and it kind of, it's been quite an interesting process. Next year might be the time to look into that sort of thing. For me personally, I feel like this year, especially since it happened the way it did and caught everybody off guard, that's one of the reasons that I think we need to look into giving it back to businesses and to citizens, because it's been a pretty, as I said, interesting process. And then to show good stewardship, that we're not just here to spend. Although we do have needs. I have needs at home too, but I don't spend like a maniac, although my husband may differ with that. At some point you have to be a little resolved to say, I respect that this is, we have needs and we're growing and we have services that are needed, but this year, since everything the way it went down, we need to look at this year returning it, next year starting from scratch with what we're looking at, and then talk further about how we want to put it into a fund or whatever. That's just me. Argue if you will, but that's just my opinion.
Just talking to you.
I'm not going to argue.
Well, I'll argue if I need to.
Yeah, so it seems as though the consensus is, and I just would follow up on that, and I guess sort of that because I'm a little hesitant because it's all brand new, so I would be hesitant to take these things away. But again, emphasizing that really giving it a hard look next year and just continuing, not just, these things are all very important, and I agree. I think that's important, but continuing to make sure that we're using all of our resources as efficiently and as responsibly as possible. And I think people understand that, and I do want to. Well, I guess I can't say that because I understand now. We were getting some emails today about school budget, but I guess maybe your list got might have a mole, or Russia might want to check your computer, because we were getting some emails about concerned over the school budget, and I don't know.
My understanding is that
I was just kidding about you having a mole, by the way.
I think there have been meetings on PTA and school board members and the like over the question of signaling that schools are likely to be coming forward with salary issues that would be fairly significant. So I think they're thinking that...
In addition to what we've already...
Yes.
Oh.
Not for this year, I don't think.
Okay.
But I do think that there's an expectation that the school's going to be looking. I guess they're doing a salary study.
I thought they finished this.
Yeah, that's in there.
It's in the, yeah.
Right.
Because they're bringing them all up.
Yeah.
Increase the entry level.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Right.
But I don't know if that was everybody or just the entry level. We don't, but we have
I
fully
think they
funded
really
the
did.
budget, correct?
We have fully
Yeah.
funded
Yeah.
the superintendent's request.
Yes.
Okay, which
Okay.
is about $40,000 different than what the school board adopted.
Okay.
Because the school board made one change in adding a position to their budget. So,
And I think
I'm sure they
one of
can
the
dig deep.
issues you're going to have coming forward is what was said at the joint meeting, was that school board members were told that this money, the county side of the money, was to come to the school board.
Yeah.
I think that's something you're going to be dealing with in the future, and I think that's part of the way it's viewed right now.
Yes, and I heard that explicitly from school board members, both at that meeting and subsequently. But I also think that there is a sense that our standing in relation to other school systems regionally is not high, and that they would
Salary-wise, you mean?
Yes, they'd like to make progress on that.
Okay. All right,
okay.
understood.
Yeah, and when you look at it, I think you need to look at the total range of salaries. You know, for example,
Right.
you know,
Right, and you know, I know they're aware of the fact that there is the longevity pay that is in the process of phasing out, but it's going to take quite a while, as I understand it, for it to phase out. But that is money that, as it is freed, becomes available
Yeah.
for reprogramming.
Program.
Right. But you know, I think basically we know that there are going to be some other needs that people are going to be expressing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so based on what I've heard, I've made the adjustment to revenues, okay? And I think what I also heard is I can put, there's a difference of $1,347,881. And we can make that transfer to CIP unless there was anything else that the board wanted to change expenditure-wise.
Well, expenditure-wise, I did ask the question. We got the $7,500 response on BML. That's a significantly lower rate than would be charged if you were only a member of BML. It is in recognition of the fact that we would be members of both organizations, I understand. And we do get some real benefit, I think, from association with the Virginia Municipal League. BACO does some very good things, but as an organization, they are more oriented towards smaller, more rural counties, I think.
So what do we get in addition, since VML was primarily for cities and we're a county, what do we get, what would we get extra?
BML actually does a lot of good analysis of public policy issues that affect us, including figuring out how much revenue we might expect in certain areas. They are more attuned to the kinds of issues and concerns that we have as a more urbanized area than BACO often is, which does look more at county issues. On the other hand, BACO is the organization that represents entities that have the same sort of code description and requirements as we have. So in the years that I've served on the board, when we've been members of both, we've been able to benefit significantly from both organizations. And I think that recognition of our dual membership by a reduction in the overall cost would merely make it a good opportunity for us to come back to them.
Do you I mean, I don't want to get something that from BML that we're not paying for. So I'd like to know if you use them now and if they're courtesy to us. On the other hand, I don't want to say that we've just said this money that we're going to step aside and then we're going to try to spend it, you know, a lot of different ways. So
I do. I mean, I get the emails from DML. They tend to put them out more frequently than VACO during the General Assembly session. So those are the ones I get most frequently, and they give you the pretty much up-to-the-minute changes that are happening on the House or Senate floors. I tried to send at least a few of those to you.
Yeah, you did.
as we
You were
get
great.
them. I've got a really good relationship with Michelle Gowdy. So, I mean, I will admit that I know her very well. She was county attorney here for a little while. And I'm able to call her. Brief moment. But I'm able to call her directly. And like when someone asked here, how long is that one session with the veto session? Well, I don't know off the top of my head, but I called Michelle and got an immediate answer.
But you did all that without us belonging to VML.
That's correct. And I don't know that, I think she's extended me the courtesy of sending the emails and keeping me on the email list just because of our friendship, but we should probably be paying for them if I'm getting them. I don't know what other staff uses VML. I think planning makes use of their reports.
The finance does also.
Oh.
Yeah, finance, they provide a lot of, the financial information, financial analysis of what things cost, and things will come out of them earlier as to what the impact on the state budget will be on the localities. So
we've been really using their information without paying for it. Well, to be fair,
I'm very persuasive.
well, I know that. So I wish they would consider like an associate membership for.
Counties.
Well, I think this is effectively.
Oh, it is? Okay.
The normal fee is about $20,000, I think.
Oh, okay, thank you. I wasn't aware. Okay.
Yeah.
So they've given us a
Okay.
discount.
Okay.
So is there a sense?
So, yeah, I'd like to see if there's, maybe we could do a straw vote on that as well. I'm
Sir,
favorite.
Mr. Hippel?
I'm fine with it.
Okay. There's three. There you go.
All right. So that leaves a remaining amount of $1,340,381, and we could transfer that to CIP and put it in a future infrastructure fund.
Yes. I want to take 1 minute, if I could, to just mention a request that I was aware of that wasn't funded in the recommendation. The Historical Commission included in their request to the county funding of $49,000 to inventory and archive the materials that have been assembled by the county over the years in terms of the history of James City County all the way back to our colonial era. That material's just basically sitting in boxes now, and it really does represent a very significant historical record that we should be wanting to preserve, and would have some real benefit in terms of not only our historical resources, but also tourism, in the sense that it's going to allow us, for instance, to be able to document the significance of the Ambler House and have potentially a display there to show Revolutionary War artifacts, pre-Revolutionary artifacts, early colonial materials, and the like, and recognizing that we don't want to do is sit here and simply kind of nitpick away. I guess I would just tell you that the Historical Commission felt that this was a real opportunity, and that the opportunity might slip away fairly soon as the folks who were best capable of doing it reach retirement age and maybe not might not be available to do some of this kind of archival work. But it also has some significant potential to be seed money to attract grants from the state and from national organizations that, as well as private entities or corporations that are interested but want to see some kind of commitment on the part of the county for support. So here's what I would propose, because it's a little bit out of this year's budget sense, but that if there is some remaining funding available in our tourism investment fund, that we give a portion of that $49,000. I'm thinking maybe $10,000 out of this year's tourism investment fund that could be used to allow the beginning of this process to see if it's going to be productive and to see if there's the possibility of generating seed money from other grants or using it as seed money to generate other grants and maybe partner with some of our other historical associations that aren't currently making any efforts in this regard. So it would really be contingent on the availability of some funding in the current year budget. We could then revisit the question next year when we have our tourism fund replenished to see whether we wanted to, for the following subsequent 2 years, perhaps think about investing in that as well.
So you're talking about maybe $10,000.
Yeah, maybe $10,000, and then maybe next year, if it looks like it's probably 20,000,
Yeah.
and then 20,000 the following year to finish it off. So that would be. So I just wanted to ask if that would be something that board members would be comfortable with doing if that funding is available. And so I don't know what you would tell me about the availability of funding.
Okay, what I heard from you was that you're interested in potentially $10,000 in this year.
Right.
And then amending the 19 and 20 budget.
I think.
So if I can ask maybe if we can hold that for one moment.
Yes.
And then we can finish this. What I've done is finish this one off and then we can flip to the tourism fund so you can see what that looks like. And then we could make amendments there.
Okay, I have a question about street signs. Is now an okay time, or you want me to wait until?
Go ahead.
Because we had a request, and we actually went down. I think if I'm looking at the right C60, can you kind of, because we did have somebody that brought it to our attention that our C68. If I'm in the right, I've lost Jason completely.
Well, we went to go get Grace Wood.
Okay,
Because she's
all right.
very familiar with street signs.
Just got that guy in so mad he left.
Okay, street
We
signs.
need the Jeopardy music. Ah, that's it.
Oh.
Yeah. 9,000 in this current year and 8,000 for the next year.
9 to 8.
So we had about 9,000 in last budget, and that was about 50 signs.
Okay.
And we replace them on a complaint basis, or if they're damaged, if something happens to it, if somebody runs into a sign. That 9,050 signs, that includes the sign, the pole, and installation, and the hardware.
And it includes welcome to James City County signs also. So it's not just street signs, that account covers that whole thing.
If somebody runs into them on an at-fault accident, do we charge them back, or do we cover that?
We'll charge them back if they have the information.
Okay. And if we don't get it from them, do we pursue it or just let it? Do we chase them down for the?
A lot of times, unless it's the police report that, then we just replace them as it's reported.
We don't know. Okay. So we don't really have a schedule to go inventory and drive around and say, oh, the main, we need to replace that. It's on citizen.
It's on citizens and public safety. They usually report something that's faded, something that's down, and then we go out and have it marked if Miss Utility needs to come out and mark it, and then we reinstall after the sign comes in.
Okay. All right. Because we did have somebody that said that we had lots that were not looking good in the county.
So the other thing that we can do is it's not always the wear and tear on the sign. Sometimes there might be it might be obscured by landscaping, or it might not be well lit. So there might be other things we could do, moving a pole, cutting down the landscaping. So we can take a look at these on a case by case basis. That's been the easiest way to handle it. It's not always a new sign is the best way to go.
Now, the communication we got actually suggested bigger lettering.
Yeah.
Yeah, so when I
Got that. That's important. That's a very important point.
As we age.
Yes, this big would be great.
and I told Jason, I totally understand that. So when I spoke with VDOT, that type of lettering was approved and then it was rescinded. And so they're waiting for another decision on that lettering before we move forward. So I told Jason that I would like to wait a few months to ensure that it's going to go through, and if then we can make a decision at that point.
Okay.
But until that final decision is made, I didn't want to move forward with any decision.
So we could ask Mr. Carroll about what we don't know why it was rescinded, I guess.
I don't necessarily, no, I don't. But
Okay.
I'll find that out.
The
Okay.
sign lookers got older.
Yeah, the horned owl was seeing it too much.
Yeah. But I think what the gentleman who wrote to us about this was suggesting was that we do this comprehensively.
Yeah.
Which sounds like it would be a fairly expensive process.
It would. But,
And it would
you know,
include
one-
operating cost as well as the sign cost, because we
Right.
certainly don't have the staffing right now to do a comprehensive replacement.
Yeah, but I do hope that they will allow the larger print.
If they do, we make a decision, then we
Yeah.
can move forward from there.
Okay, especially in a tourism, that makes it tough when you don't know where you're going and then you're trying to look at
Around
something.
here anyway.
Yeah, so,
Siri.
yeah, true.
You got
So-
a contract with General Creech when he did all the street signs on Langley down there. All wrote from the ground up. Expensive, very expensive.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. So I have put the remaining money to bring us to a zero balance in the transfer to CIP. Or do we have a consensus to move on to the tourism investment fund? Okay, so with the tourism investment fund, with SB 942, they added back the $2 transient occupancy tax, okay, $2 per night. And half of that, because we collect that money, half of that will have to go to this marketing fund, the Tourism Council, okay? So that will have to be an appropriation by you. So that leaves it out of balance by $412,500, and it would be our recommendation. This is something where you would be able to, if you wanted to allocate dollars towards this inventory. Okay, we can do that over the next 2 years. In addition, with 942, there's language in there about money going to the chamber not being below the dollar amount that had been in 2018. It would be staff's recommendation that last year we had given $605,000 directly to the chamber and another $135,000 to the chamber, but directed to Christmas and marketing, or Christmas and Williamsburg Marketing Fund. So the recommendation by staff would be that we could amend the layout of the budget and give the $735,000 to the chamber, and then direct those $735,000 to the specific areas.
735 or 740?
740. See, I told you I can't do math in my head. And it was only a $5,000 difference.
Yeah, we had plans for that.
So, and what we would do is we'd make those adjustments on the expenditure side. I can type them in now, or I can have that prepared for you, and then we can translate them to the adoption. But the remaining, if you did want to allocate some money for a tourism purpose, other than with this additional $412,500, our recommendation is that that money be set aside because there are a lot of tourism infrastructure needs. And as 942 evolves with the establishment of the council, there may be opportunities to again, going back to your point where a lot of grants want to see the money coming from the government, this could be used as matches to be able to move forward on some infrastructure projects that way.
So we'll dedicate where those funds are going.
Pardon me?
We'll dedicate that
Yes,
fund.
we'll dedicate the funds to the chamber. We will identify
Where they should be.
where they will go.
Yes.
So things like Jamestown Yorktown Foundation.
Correct.
We will say that will pass through the chamber first, and then we
And then
will
go to them.
Go to them. And
That's-
Historic Jamestown also has dollars associated with that, and that's what we'll do also.
Good.
And so then you're saying the rest in the tourism fund, hold off on not earmarking
Yes. The four-
right now.
Correct.
Okay.
That fall into the contingency category at the bottom?
Could
Yes,
possibly
Yeah.
regionally or county. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
But to Dr. McLennan's point, if you would like us to allocate specific money to the Historic Commission based on their request, we can make that adjustment here.
Uh-huh.
There we go here.
So I guess my question would come back to whether we think that there would be funding left in this year's.
In this year's for 10,000?
Right.
Yes, I believe we had looked at that.
And we had
there-
programmed a contingency.
Well, for FY18 is
Correct.
what he's saying.
Right, and we had programmed a contingency in 18 as well.
Okay, so
Okay.
yes.
So-
We can do the 10,000 this year, and if you would like to program anything over the next 2 years,
Yeah.
we
So
can do that.
so again, we could if it turns out that this is not something that's working well, we can always revisit the question next year.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess I would ask if we would think about designating 10,000 out of this year's contingency in tourism, 20,000, and then 20,000 for the purpose of.
Would you mind forwarding that information?
Sure.
And
Or it'd be 10, 20, and 19 to the 49.
10, 20, and 20 is what I heard him
10, 20,
say.
20.
But they
Well,
only
or
be
19,
49.
yeah.
So they'd be 19 left.
I told you, you're watching math in that.
Yes, he can do that. That's great.
We get a percentage cut on these things we find, don't we?
do we have to make that call? Just so I have a chance to read over the information, do we have to make that call tonight?
To vote on it.
That can actually be amended by the time we get to the.
Yes, we can amend it.
Okay,
That can be
yeah.
done. And,
Sounds like
what
a
we
great-
can do, what we can do is we can just allocate it all in contingency, and then we can change it and then put it have it in the resolution.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
Based on
So we're saying because of SB 942, this is money that has to be spent on tourism related.
Actually, it does
No.
not. Okay, that is not part of the legislation. It does not have to be spent on tourism. However, it's staff's recommendation since it's being generated on the $2.
And we have
And
we have excess tourism needs in infrastructure.
In
Right.
infrastructure
So
that
field
we
maintenance,
use this
things
as
like
a
that.
funding stream.
okay,
Use it
right,
as a
and
funding stream.
knowing too that it could go. So all right, okay, got it.
So the difference here would be. Okay. So how does that look?
Uh-huh.
Okay. We'll go ahead and do that then.
Okay.
All right. I think that we have everything that we need to be able to amend the proposed budget to create an adopted budget with, we'll annotate these changes in a memo, and then we'll have the board resolution that appropriates the money.
Let me ask you one question. The affected pages of this paper document, will you have the corrected pages for us so that we can,
Yes, we will.
thank you.
Yes, we will.
So I don't keep getting white out on my screen.
You want it to correct balance, you can read it, right?
say?
Any discussions on JCSA? No, good.
Have you gotten any feedback on the grinder pump change or?
No, ma'am.
No?
I really haven't gotten any feedback on that at all.
Okay. So,
Do we need to close that meeting now?
I guess adjournment would be in order.
We can do that. All right, so I'm looking for a motion to adjourn 5 PM on May 8th, 2018, to the regular meeting.
So moved.
Mr. Bell?
Mr. Triple? Aye. Mr. Eisenhower?
Aye.
Mr. McGlinnan?
Aye.
Ms. Larson?
aye.
Ms. Abbott?
Aye. Our meeting is adjourned.
All right. Is there a motion to adjourn our meeting until 5 PM on May 8th,
So moved.
2018? Mr. Porter?
Mr. Eisenhower?
Aye.
Mr. McGlinnan?
Aye.
Ms. Sadler?
Aye.
Ms. Dipple?
Aye.
Ms. Larson?
Aye.